In this lecture, we're going to review a variety of relaxation strategies that athletes or other performers might use to try to lower their arousal or activation level to perform their best. So why might relaxation strategies be important for sport or performance? While it's certainly possible to be too relaxed, and we've talked about in a previous lecture how the ideal activation is usually a moderate level of activation for most performance, in reality, most performers struggle more with over-arousal, and that's understandable given the environment in which most performances take place. There's competition, which inherently activates in people. There's often the presence of observers, maybe several thousand observers in a crowd. The individual's important goals are on the line. Sometimes the most important thing people have been training their whole lives for is at stake, and that creates heightened arousal. So most often, folks are interested in strategies to lower arousal into a more optimum level versus trying to energize from too low of arousal. There are certainly exceptions. One big one that perhaps comes to mind easily is those competitions against lesser opponents by individuals or teams, where sometimes not taking an opponent seriously enough will lead to too low of an arousal going into a competition, and teams or individuals can find themselves in a really difficult match that didn't need to be based on talent alone, but because they weren't really energized for that particular match, they weren't activated or intense enough to perform their best. We also know that a sense of feeling relaxed, the body feeling free of tension, but at the same time energized, is a very common experience for people during peak performances. So during peak experiences, people often describe feeling relaxed, loose, free from tension is a common descriptor. Excess arousal, as we know, does a lot of things bad to human motor performance. It can waste energy. Activating the body does burn energy, and that can be wasteful, especially in sports that demand lots of energy. It can lead to muscle tension that can undermine speed and coordination, things that are often critically important for optimal performance. It can actually increase the risk for injury, and we'll return to that in a later lecture in the course, the ways that can happen, but it can actually increase risk for injury. And it can also interrupt the automaticity of motor performance, which is necessary for many sport skills. We need our performance to sort of flow automatically to be ideal, and tension can interfere with that. So a few things I could tell you up front about the basic overall goal of relaxation training. Like physical training, relaxation training is going to be most effective when it is repeated over and over again over time. We call it relaxation training for a reason. These strategies are not going to be that helpful in kind of a one-off or once in a while kind of application. They really need to be practiced daily over time to get the kind of benefits one might expect. In relaxation training, we're often asking athletes to train to what we would call zero activation or total relaxation. And that might seem odd given that we talked about just on the previous slide how most sports don't require us to be zero activation or total relaxation. They actually require us to be a moderate level. So why do we bother trying to train to sort of a total relaxed state during relaxation training? Well, the reason is that there's a couple of reasons. One is it's an important step towards being able to achieve what we want in the sport performance context, which is momentary relaxation. The ability to be able to sense tension and immediately release or relax that tension in the moment. And training to zero relaxation helps that occur. An analogy I would provide for this would be, for example, often in physical training for our sport, we train in situations that aren't realistic either. For example, we might train under conditions of total exhaustion. I remember, as a high school basketball player, our coach having us, run sprints over and over again and then go immediately to the free throw line. Well, you're probably never going to shoot a free throw in a basketball game under that level of exhaustion. But by training for that, you're actually preparing to deal with the lesser levels of exhaustion you'd experience in actual competition. Or coach might train their team under maximum distraction, so try to bring in all kinds of distractors, sort of overtraining for that so that they're prepared to deal with the moderate levels of distraction that might take place in the actual context. So to some extent, zero activation is like overtraining we do in lots of other kinds of training for sport. We also know that not all strategies work equally well. There's a wide variety of strategies that we'll talk about, and they all are effective for different folks. But this is one of those situations where individual differences really matter. And what we recommend to people is to experiment with trial and error, try different approaches to relaxation, and see which ones are more effective and enjoyable for you. Because positive expectancies and enjoyment are critical. If you don't enjoy or think that a relaxation strategy is helpful for you, it's probably not worth the time to practice it. For those of you who may be going to become coaches and might want to implement some kind of relaxation training as part of your training of your athletes, it's really important that you choose a strategy that you believe in so you can communicate those positive expectancies to the athletes that you're training to make sure that those expectancies can help you have maximum benefit from the training strategy. Now, there are two pretty broad approaches we can talk about to relaxation strategies. And they're based upon this idea that relaxation and activation and arousal are really mind-body states. They're not just the body, they're not just the mind, but they're a mind-body state that involves correlated states both of the brain, the thoughts, feelings, and images, things that occur in our brain, and our body, our muscle states of tension or relaxation, our bodily functions of breathing, those sorts of things. So relaxation and activation are really mind-body states. So given that they're mind-body, we can think of two different approaches. One we might call kind of body-to-mind or muscle-to-mind techniques. These are techniques that are going to focus primarily on the activity or manipulation of the body itself to try to create a relaxed mind-body state overall. Then we can think about the mind-to-body or mind-to-muscle techniques. These are things that are going to focus on primarily the content of our brain, the thoughts, images, sensations, awareness, the activities of our brain or our mind as a way to then alter the sensations of the body, so that the activation of muscles and tension of the muscles. Now, we'll talk about these as two separate things, but in reality, there's a lot of overlap, and in practice, most people choose strategies that are some combination of the two. There's no need to have sort of a purity of doing just one or just the other. Many approaches typically combine both. So, for example, you might have a technique that focuses on breathing, a muscle-to-mind technique, and also incorporates imagery or visualization, which would be a mind-to-muscle technique. So in practice, they're often combined, but for organizational purposes, we're going to talk about them as broadly different and distinct approaches. For muscle-to-mind techniques, we'll talk about a couple of different approaches. One of those is breathing strategies, and breathing is perhaps one of the most common and useful relaxation strategies. It's common because everybody breathes, and it's easy for people to often learn these techniques and apply them instantly, and they often provide almost immediate relief for relaxation for individuals. There's a variety of names for breathing techniques. Sometimes we'll hear about things like complete breath or complete breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, belly breathing. All of these are very similar, if not identical, approaches. Diaphragmatic or belly breathing is well illustrated in this diagram here, where it's based upon the fact that our breathing is really controlled by the diaphragm, which is a muscle that runs right underneath our lungs. As the diaphragm contracts and moves downward, it actually pulls air into our lungs through a thing called interpleural pressure, which we won't go into a whole lot of details, but it basically creates low pressure in our chest cavity and draws air into the lungs. And then when the diaphragm relaxes and actually moves upward, that creates more pressure inside our lungs and forces the air out. One of the reasons why it's called belly breathing, by the way, is that when the diaphragm moves down to draw air into the lungs, that puts pressure on other organs in your belly and forces your belly outward. So usually on the inhalation, we think about the abdomen moving out and the belly raising. And on exhalation, also, by the way, the chest cavity rises. So for complete breath, we'll often ask people to put a hand on their chest, put a hand on their belly. And as they breathe in, their belly comes out initially. And as they finish the complete breath, your chest cavity rises. And that gets maximum air into your lungs. And on exhalation, the chest goes down, the belly goes in to force all the air out. And so you'll see those kinds of techniques. We actually have an assignment this week where you'll get to practice all of these techniques. So I won't go into a lot of detail here. You'll hear about those during the practice techniques in the assignment. The nice thing about breathing techniques is they take advantage of your body's interaction with your nervous system to really full, complete, deep belly breathing signals your sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight system that activates stress, signals it to calm down or to shut down for a minute. And it signals the parasympathetic system, our rest and digest system, the system that's designed for our body to be in a more relaxed, homeostatic state. It stimulates that system to become more active and spread relaxation throughout the body. So even though the focus is simply on breathing, it actually can have body-wide effects. Another muscle-to-mind approach is what we call progressive muscle relaxation. This was developed in the early 20th century by a physician named Neil Jacobson. You'll sometimes hear this referred to as Jacobsonian relaxation for that reason. Progressive muscle relaxation really focuses on manipulating the muscles to achieve the mind-body state of relaxation, and it involves the systematic tensing and releasing muscle groups throughout the body. So for example, you might focus on your right forearm and hand, and you might try to tense that, clench that fist, create as much tension as you can in your forearm and your fist. Really pay attention to what that tension feels like, hold it for a few seconds, and then release it. And try to let all of those muscle groups relax as much as possible. Pay attention to what that relaxation feels like. And that would be a similar process repeated throughout the body, literally from head to toe. The goal of progressive relaxation is to get as close as possible to zero tension anywhere in any muscle groups of the body. With training over time, one of the goals of progressive relaxation is that individuals can both learn to be more sensitive to tension, so being more sensitive and quicker to pick up on, oh, I've got a lot of tension in my shoulders, or I've got a lot of tension right now in my lower body. I need to probably release some of that. And then to practice those skills to be able to instantly release that tension. Without practice, if you were to notice tension in your shoulders and neck, you probably couldn't do a lot about it. With practice with PMR, you could notice that and then almost immediately achieve total release and relaxation of that tension with practice. So this is definitely an exercise where practice is necessary. This approach, because it focuses on the sort of really extreme tensing and releasing of muscles, is not ideal for athletes who may have orthopedic issues or injuries or are recovering from surgeries. And so other techniques would probably be more ideal for those people in that situation. There is also a passive form of what's called PR or PMR. There's a passive form of progressive relaxation that involves none of the tensing, but simply scanning the body, noticing what tension is already there, and trying to release it. So instead of taking the tension, say, from a 10 down to a 0, you might just scan your body and say, oh, it feels like about a 4 right now. I'm going to see if I can just release it and get it down to 0. The passive form, I can tell you, doesn't work for everybody. Some people don't get any benefit from that. And most people benefit from that only after they've practiced the more active form for a while. Then there's a whole variety of mind-to-muscle techniques. These are, again, those techniques that focus on the cognitive activity of the brain, feeling states, imagery, thoughts, to try to achieve that mind-body state of relaxation. One of those is meditation or mindfulness, the conscious and intentional direction of awareness. I'm going to devote a whole other lecture to that topic, so I'm not going to say much more about that now, other than that is one of the mind-to-muscle techniques. There's also the option to use visualization or imagery. This would involve things like imagining either settings or places or experiences that are associated with relaxation and trying to use that, just filling your mind with the movie of that experience to try to achieve relaxation. This approach is often combined with breathing approaches to achieve relaxation. There's another interesting approach that was also developed in the early 20th century called autogenic training. Autogenic training is a really interesting approach, and for some people, really a favorable approach that really focuses on trying to create and imagine sensations. And those sensations typically are warmth and heaviness. And the reason those sensations are chosen is that those are sensations often associated with muscle relaxation. There's some suggestion that that may be related to increased blood flow and more relaxed muscles that lead to more warmth and a sense of heaviness associated with relaxation of those muscles. So in autogenic training, all you do is you just try to really focus on imagining and trying to recreate in your senses those sensations of warmth and heaviness as a way of creating muscle relaxation and lowering activation. So some of the key takeaways from this lecture, we know that many performers can benefit from learning techniques to reduce activation, lower muscle tension, and better manage overall arousal and activation to keep themselves in a more optimal state for performance. There are several different effective strategies available. The key is really picking one that works for you or the athletes that you're training, one that they like, one that they find effective and are willing to practice over time. Because practice really matters. Practice does make perfect in this regard. Same as with physical training, there's really no shortcuts. If you want to learn to relax and be able to moderate your activation and arousal level, you've really got to devote some time to practicing it intentionally over time, at minimum over weeks or months, if not over an entire career.